Anyone who has played League extensively has most likely accepted the fact that conflict and toxicity is inevitable. This is a case that extends to other online PvP games, such as Counter-Strike, Valorant, Overwatch, and many more. In recent times, the topic of toxicity has been brewing a lot more than previous years, and discussions around this topic has also risen. The term toxic in gaming is extremely widespread, that I commonly find players using the phrase incorrectly, and I can't help but feel like the term has lost some of its meaning, much like other internet slang, take the word sim or the OK boomer trend. This made me think, what really defines toxic? Not just in gaming, but in the overall behavior of anyone. On a side note, thanks for helping me reach 100 subscribers. It might not be a high number, but it means a lot to me, and I can only be grateful for that. Alright, enjoy the video. A couple of main questions coming into this topic include, is flaming someone toxic? Is making fun of their failures toxic? And is acting obnoxious purposefully considered toxic? First, it's important to check out the literal definition of toxic in the dictionary. The most literal meaning of toxic according to the Oxford Dictionary means poisonous, very harmful, unpleasant in a persuasive or insidious way. A toxic person, by definition, mainly means someone whose behavior causes negativity or upsets you. By these meanings alone, it's still rather hard to identify what is toxic behavior in practice. Oftentimes between people who are acquainted with each other, they playfully make fun of each other, but in the end of the day, it's not serious, and people with enough context can tell it's not serious. This is commonly called friendly banter, and by no means is it considered toxic. The catch is that banter between two people from an outsider's perspective can be misinterpreted as actual animosity instead of what it is in reality. Toxicity in definition sounds like something that's easy to recognize, but in practice there are in fact many ambiguities which makes it hard to judge a person's intentions at first glance. Contrary to popular belief, not everyone thinks the same way. I know, right? This is very much the case in online video games where strangers are oftentimes grouped up with each other and they have to work together coherently to win. One person's idea of how things should be done is not necessarily the same with how the other person sees it. It's very easy to react to a teammate failing and come to the conclusion that they are in the wrong or they shouldn't have done that in the first place. Taking these assumptions to the extreme can lead to heated conversations of the blame game or feeling like the other person isn't trying to do their best. For example, when you're messing up and someone gives you an earful, it's considerably easy to get mad as well, because you already feel bad for screwing up, and someone pointing out what you did wrong and complaining about it certainly won't make you feel better. In cases like these, we can see and we probably know that online games like League can often bring out the worst in people, and the unwillingness to understand what the other players in your team sees leads to fighting in the chat. Do I consider back and forths just calling each other out toxic? Well, kind of. Well, to better explain it, the players themselves might not be toxic, because I believe inherently we were not completely toxic, but the spiteful conversations they had are what I would consider possibly toxic, because it does not lead to anything useful. And it only results in resentment, people being upset, arguing, and they end up playing worse. Or the situation doesn't get better. When the situation comes to this point, where they are insulting each other without rational intentions, that is when the intent of the conflict is gone, and the conversation is just plain out toxic. A level of absolute toxicity is when someone very clearly doesn't care and says things or does things with the sole reason of ruining the experience for others. Things such as running it down, doing something that benefits the enemy team, using racial slurs, insulting your name, calling you nobody, and worst of all, being called unskilled, and those kinds of slurs. I generally believe that it's hard to judge a player's personality based on experience from a single 30 to 40 minute game, because these games tend to bring out the bad side of us, and furthermore, it's only a single game. It's only 30 or 40 minutes of your life out of the many days, weeks, and years that you get to live. But sometimes there are exceptions. People that from the start act like a jerk to everyone, and if one thing doesn't go the way they want to, they give up and do things to ruin the experience for others as well. Some players even go as far as to actively stick around you to make you feel bad even after the game is over. And some people cross the line way too far by doing things such as doxing, although I will say things like these are some of the rarest instances to happen, but I'll just point out that it has happened before. So now the question arises, is toxicity caused because the games are toxic? No. I don't think it is right to claim that people are the way they are because of the game they're playing. And I don't think it's right to claim that the online game you're playing is toxic and that's why your experience is very horrible. The reality is that with every environment that requires you to match with strangers, there will always come a point where you meet someone not compatible with you. And the power of anonymity allows people to feel more liberated to say what they want unfiltered. You can't see them face to face, they might not be in the same country as you, so what's there to lose if you offend them? It also doesn't mean that the cause is the ability to interact with strangers and it shouldn't be a feature anymore. Because on the other side, there are many good people that create fun and cool experiences. And positive outcomes with these online interactions are possible. So if you were to ask me if League of Legends is a toxic game, I wouldn't straight up say yes, because the game in itself is not inherently toxic, but the sad reality is that it has a very toxic community because of the whole notion surrounding how the game should be played and how people act towards the way the game should be played, and it has regrettably gotten worse over the last few years. YouTube clips of certain pro players always have some comments making fun of them and their career for no reason, even if it's a play glorifying them. So to go back to my question at the start of the video, flaming someone can or cannot be considered toxic depending on your intentions. Acting obnoxiously on purpose isn't necessarily toxic unless it's done out of pure spite to offend the other. And lastly, and most importantly, no, I'm not toxic for making 3 videos highlighting and laughing at other people's fails. But on a serious note, I hope that everyone can practice to be more aware of what they're saying or doing in online game environments, because no one is completely aware of what's happening on the other side. At the end of the day, behind the game, behind the screen, there is just another human who faces similar emotions. A lot of the games provide us with tools to deal with toxicity, although they are frankly pretty imperfect. If someone is harassing you, you can mute and report instead of giving them the reaction they want. This goes not just for video games, but it also goes to forums, live streams, and other things like that. Because some people go out of their way to send hateful messages to spam and disturb others. And it works because instead of reporting and ignoring, a lot of people just seem to buy into it and respond and give the haters what they wanted. Well, what do you guys think? Anything you have in your mind, you can comment it down below. If you enjoyed it, hit like, and I'm done here. Video's over. Goodbye.
Fade. My husband!